Hello, it's Dave at VTR. Welcome to the channel. And today we're restoring a vintage Kenner Star Wars B-Wing, an absolutely cracking vehicle. I say restoring, but I've actually just finished. I've done a full strip down, fix and rebuild of this amazing ship. Now this is a slightly longer than usual video for me, so I thought I'd show my face, which I haven't done for a while, because I'd like to say a few words. First, I'd like to thank Luke at Reynolds Reviews for gifting me the B-Wing for restoration in the first place. If it wasn't for his gift, this video would not exist. And second, I'd like to say thanks to Dave at Toy Polloi, the master of toy restoration. In fact, I've got a badge here that says no Legos were harmed. That actually also applies to this restoration, by the way. But I'd just like to say thanks to Dave at Toy Polloi because he gave me a shout out on his channel, and that honestly gave me a boost of subscribers. So I'd like to welcome all the new subscribers to the channel. Thank you very much for coming along. And I'd also like to thank all the long-time supporters as well, because without your support, I would not be making these videos. So sit back, relax, grab your drink of choice, and let's see the restoration of the B-Wing. And I'll be back later to show you it in its full glory. Now, on the surface, this B-Wing that Lucas sent in looks in fantastic condition. And to be honest, it is. All the decals are present. It looks like it's complete. I can't see any missing pieces, but there are issues. And so we're going to dig in and find out what they are, because you can't come up with solutions or fixes until you fully understand what the problems are. Now, this is all thirsty work, so I'm going to have a sip of my tea. Now, the first obvious issue relates to this piece here. It's actually part of the canopy. Let's just bring the rest of the canopy into play. It's supposed to fit on the rear like so and remain fixed, but this one just falls off. If you look inside, yeah, that looks like it's snapped. In fact, I can see glue. Perhaps there was a previous repair. So this is going to be an interesting challenge. How can we fix this in a robust way? In fact, this could be quite tricky because I'm not exactly sure how we gain access to that. So that could be fun. I really don't want to have to buy a brand new part, so challenge accepted. Now, the next issue relates to the heart of this ship, the wings. These wings are supposed to extend and retract when you rotate this engine here. I think that's an amazing piece of design to make the dial essentially an inherent part of the ship. Awesome, awesome idea. But as you can see, when I twist this engine, well, it squeaks, and there's a tiny, tiny bit of movement on that right wing, but that is about it. These wings are supposed to extend, I think, up to about 90 degrees, so that's definitely broken. And to fix this, I'm gonna have to open this ship up. Oh, goody. Something I completely forgot about and haven't tested at all are the electronics. Now, we have a battery hatch here. Let's just take a quick look. It looks like two AA's, which I just happen to have. Now, like a lot of other vintage Star Wars ships, I assume that there aren't any lights on this, but instead, if this all works correctly, when you press the button, you're going to get the worst sound that humans have ever produced. Let's try it out. Oh, that's a bit of a letdown. Quiet as a mouse. Now, that is a common problem. It may be that I just need to reignite the motor that's sitting inside this ship, or perhaps the wiring is broken, who knows. While we're here, we'll just test the undercarriage, and that's working perfectly. Awesome. I have noticed a few cosmetic issues. For example, these stickers are beginning to peel, but that's easy enough to resolve. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but one of the guns on the wings is actually quite bent, so we'll see if we can straighten that. And generally, it's very dusty and grubby, so we'll make sure we give this a very good clean. But if you think about it, this ship I think was released in 1984. It's nearly 40 years old, so it has stood the test of time really well. And once this is restored, it's going to look absolutely awesome. I've been told that this ship is actually quite difficult to fix. I can only assume that the mechanisms inside are fairly complicated. I am intrigued by how the wing mechanism works. Also this gyroscopic cockpit, I assume there's just a heavy weight in the bottom of that. So for this restoration, the first thing I'm going to do is disassemble the ship in its entirety into its component parts. By doing that, I'm hoping that this video can act as a reference for anyone else in the future who wishes to fix their B-wing, regardless of what the problem may be. Okay, it's a new day, let's crack this open. But first, another cup of tea. Right, there are 2 screws under this wing, so I just need to work out how to get to them. Let's see, that's about as far as the wing extends. It's possible the wing actually slides off. Let's have a look. Yes, there we go, revealing the other 2 screws. In fact, there's another 3 screws. Okay, I think that's all of the screws out of the body. The end gun has now come off as well. There's a lot of screws there. In fact, let me just show you a trick that I use while I'm working on old vintage toys. I have one of these magnetic mats, and this is really useful because you can basically lay out the screws as they are positioned on the toy. Now, all of these are the same size, but often you find that they'll use different size screws, and so this is a really good way of recording where they all go. And in fact, this one's a really cool mat because you can write on the mat as well, if you so wish. All right, I think we're at the point of no return. Let's open this up. I don't think there's going to be any springs in here, but I'm looking forward to seeing how this all works. And there we are, the inside of a B-wing. Doesn't look too bad, although I might regret saying that later. Well, there's the part of the wing mechanism. You can see the bar there for the undercarriage. There's the motor, so we'll see if we can get that working later. And here, well, there is a spring and there's a cog for the wing mechanism. Doesn't look too bad. There is this little piece here. Is that snapped off? I don't know. Right, let's dig into these wings, find out what's going on. But before I do that, I think this cockpit can be removed. We don't need that for now, we'll come back to that later. And let's have a closer look at this wing mechanism. Now, the way the wings work is that you rotate this engine, and we can see that there's a cog on the end of the engine there as I twist it. And then underneath we've got this sort of rack. Very much reminds me of the old Lego Technic solutions for steering. And so as you turn the engine, oh, why is that not turning anymore? There we go, as you turn the engine, that rack moves. And I can only assume that the wing mechanisms here are somehow supposed to be connected to that rack, but they're not. What's going on? Let's get my torch because there aren't enough lights around here, believe it or not. Okay, so on the end of that rack, you can see we've got this loop, and I believe that the wings should be connected in that loop. Let's have a look at one of these wing mechanisms. Yeah, this is definitely loose. There we go. Right, so this peg on the end of the wing should definitely be sitting inside of that loop of the rack. So as the rack moves, it's going to force the wing up and down. I think the wing sits inside, or sits on top of there. Yeah, so it sits on top of there. In fact, there we go. Let's move the, so now as I move the engine, the rack moves, that peg is inside the loop of the rack, and now we can see it moving up and down the wing. So I think basically all that's happened is that over time, maybe with a little bit of force, those pegs have come loose from the rack. Now the other problem I believe we've got is due to this piece that I found loose. And I think this is supposed to hold this end of the rod down where the cog hits the rack, because otherwise this cog is just going to move around in a loose fashion, and yeah, it's not going to work very well. And there is definitely a hole in this piece here which looks like it fits on the peg on the cog here. What I'm not sure about is, where does this mount? That's not clear to me at all. So I want to take this all apart anyway, so I think we'll come back to where this mounts. Right, next stage, I'm going to look at the motor, but before I do that, I want to remove some of these other pieces so I can just work a bit more easily. Well, that was a right faff, removing this piece from the body. And the reason is all down to that tiny little peg there that was secured very well into the post of the body. A little tip, I just use something like this to lever out this piece from the body right by the peg, and that way there's a good chance you're not going to snap it, and we don't want that. Right, let's track down the problem with the sound on this B-wing. I've got my batteries, let's just put those in there. I'm going to shut the switch like so, and I have a continuity tester. I'm just going to see by closing the circuit here whether we get a buzzing sound or not. And we do. That's good news. That means the switch and the wiring is good. In fact, let's just take that off the switch, and let's see if we can just close the circuit with the switch itself. Yep. So that's good news. The switch, the wiring is good, but it does mean there's something wrong with the motor, and that is a very common problem. As is always the case with these motors, when they've been sat around for years, they tend to sort of freeze up. Perhaps there's a little bit of corrosion that gets in there. So, a couple of tricks. One is that we can just spin the motor just to try and free up some of the corrosion that may be in there. And the other is to use a good old trusty hammer and just give it a couple of little taps. That should be enough for now. I've got my dodgy battery pack now that I've created. Don't do this at home. I've got the switch permanently on. Let's put the battery pack in and see what happens. Nothing apparently. Okay, let's, oh, no, possibly there's some life. There we go. That is one motor running. That didn't take much encouragement. And just to make sure, I've got some Deoxit D5 here, some contact cleaner. I use this for switches, especially on audio equipment. You know, when you get dust in the old dials and you get the popping and crackling, this is quite good for actually cleaning that stuff out. I'm just going to run a little bit inside the motor, and then she'll be good for many years to come. And there we are, the sweet sound of a running motor. It's not going to sound like that though once it's back in the B-wing, that's for sure. Now it's the turn of the cockpit, and the problem here is that the back end has just completely snapped off from the front end. If you look very closely, you can see the brake there. It may have been glued in the past, I'm not sure. Now I thought that I would be able to take this cockpit apart, but it doesn't look like it. I can certainly remove the canopy, which I'm going to do anyway because I don't want to break it while I'm making the fixes. There we go. What else? If I look underneath here, there's a panel here which looks like it could be removed, and it certainly looks like they might be screwed down at the front. Ah yes, screw hiding underneath the sticker. In fact, this sticker's already peeling away. Maybe somebody has already had a go at this. Let's undo that screw, remove the panel and see what's underneath. There we go. Let me get my torch. There is a solid metal rod. That's the weight. Now, I was told by Andy from Hollow Chronicles that there's actually a screw hiding underneath the sticker here at the end. Let's just see if there's any give on this sticker. Oh, there is a little bit actually. Okay. I'm going to put some lighter fluid on here so I can remove this sticker and reuse it again later. And Andy was correct, there is a screw hidden down there, so let's undo it and see if we can get out this broken piece. And there we are. It's actually much smaller than I thought it was going to be, and I assume that had snapped off of there. Yeah, look at that. Now, the fortunate thing is that it's a nice clean break by the looks of it, so I think I'll be able to glue that back on. The issue is going to be that a screw goes in the end of there, so a lot of pressure is going to be applied to this joint. I don't know if glue is going to be enough. I need to think about how I'm going to fix this. Okay, I've been wondering how to fix this. I am going to glue it. It's not the cleanest breaks though. So I have a couple of little pins. I'm going to use the good old trick from Dave at Toy Polloi. I've got the tiniest drill bit here. So I'm going to make a few holes, put the pins in, and we'll glue it all together. Okay, after drilling and putting in the pins, I've just done a test fit. That looks pretty good. So I'm just going to glue that and then we'll leave it to dry. It's actually fixed on much better than I thought it would. It's pretty secure. The pins are doing their job. I'm just going to let that dry. I did say I was going to pull apart this vintage Kenner Star Wars B-Wing into its component parts, and that's exactly what I've done. As you can see on this table, there's the parts for the cockpit. Even the battery compartment or the battery lid comes apart. I guess the main heart of it is this housing here, which contains the undercarriage mechanism and also the mechanism for the wings. I thought it'd be more complicated, to be honest. It's not that bad. But right now, I'm going to clean all these pieces, make sure the stickers are all back on properly, and then we're ready for reassembly.
Return of the Jedi. The TIE interceptors are on a mission, but here comes the B-Wing fighter with its adjustable wings and gravity-controlled cockpit. It's a hit. But wait, will the B-Wing's warning buzzer bring help, or will the Empire be victorious? Only you can decide with Star Wars toys.
It's another day in the restoration of this B-Wing, but it's a good day as we get to reassemble this amazing ship. All the parts have been cleaned, all the stickers have been fixed, so now we need to put it back together again. There are 32 pieces in total, and I have to remember how it's reassembled because the ship's kind of made up in layers, so I need to make sure that all the pieces go back in the right order, and they're held together by 18 screws. So there's quite a lot of pieces and quite a lot of screws to crack on with, so let's just crack on. My approach to reassembling this B-Wing will be like making a sandwich. These outer parts of the body are the slices of bread. I'm starting with the side that doesn't have the screw holes in, so that when I finish the sandwich with the other part of the outer body, which does have the screw holes in, I've got access to actually do up the screws. I've also jacked up this body on some boxes, just like you would when you're restoring a car, so I can gain access to underneath, and it's going to be much easier to sort out the wing mechanism. Talking of wings, we'll start there. Both of these wings are actually identical, but we only need one to start with. What's important is that this peg is facing towards the center of the body. And we'll slot that in like so. And we'll just demonstrate how that works with the rack. The peg slides into the hole there in the rack, and then the rack will move left and right like this, forcing the wing up and down. Now we don't need the rack for now, so we'll come back to that later. With the wing in place, we can now attach the engine housing back to the body. This is upside down at the moment. I just want to show you the pegs here. There are 3 of them. They need to align with the holes here in the body. the battery end cap also aligns with the battery compartment here. But before we attach this, we mustn't forget the button for the sound that just fits on the body over here in the corner, like so. We're just going to turn this upside down and align the pegs. We need to be really careful because we don't want to break them, of course. And we need to make sure the cables are out of the way, they don't get snatched. That's aligned. The motor you also want to slide into place, like so. And then we just gently push down on those pegs until they're fully seated into the body. Job done. Right, we're making good progress. We need to fit this rather odd looking piece. It's almost as if it's a design afterthought. It basically goes around the engines. It just slides into place. It just needs some maneuvering and it will sort of slide in. There we go. And when it aesthetically looks good like that, that's pretty much it. Right, this is my last chance to turn this part of the body over. So I'm just going to test the motor and the switch to make sure they still work. I have my dodgy battery pack. Let's put that in, press the button, and let's see what happens. Yes, that's working still. We'll now focus on the undercarriage and finish off the wings. The order of operation is really important here, so we'll be working on them both together. Here's our good old friend, the rack. We're just going to place this over the peg of the wing we've already installed, like so, and that slides back and forward nicely. Next, we'll install the undercarriage bar. I'm just going to attach the undercarriage to it first, like so. And that will just slide in there and across the engine housing. We also need to make sure we slot this part of the undercarriage in as well. That just goes in there like so. Now when I slide the bar, we have an operating undercarriage. Finally, we can install the other wing. We just need to make sure that the peg is facing towards the center of the body again. We're just going to slide that into the rack like so, and then we're just going to rest the rod on these pillars here. And there we are. Now we can gently move the rack back and forward, and both wings are now operating. Fantastic. Now we move on to the engine that acts as the operator for the wings. I will install that, but first of all, I need to construct it from all these pieces. The main piece is this rod. It actually has a ratchet on the end that operates with this piece. So these wings are ratcheted, which is quite nice. And then we have the engine piece, and that fits on the end. This needs to be screwed on. Like so. Next we add this spring, the other part of the ratchet mechanism. Then the important part, which is the cog, and that operates against the rack that we've already installed into the body. And then finally, we have this piece here that was loose when I opened the body, and this sits on the end, and it basically stops the cog from falling off the rod. Installing this is fairly easy. There are no screws or anything, so this end piece literally just slots in to the engine housing here. So I'm going to slide that in there and slide it in here. Okay, let's test this. As I turn the engine, you can see the ratchet doing its job, but more importantly, the wings are now extending and retracting. What the hell have you done to my ship? I only brought it in for a service. Let's reconstruct the cockpit under the watchful eye of the pilot. To be honest, I don't think he's all that happy, so we better crack on. So we'll start with the underside. Two pieces here. Just need to slot the gun over the peg at the front. That's simple enough. And then we'll take the cockpit and slide that in like so. I didn't really need to remove this undercover, but I just wanted to see whether there was a weight. And there was that heavy metal rod, which was quite interesting. And then at the front here, we just need to jiggle this around. There we go, pops in. And under the sticker, there's a screw. We just need to replace that. It's a real shame we couldn't have taken this cockpit further apart. I was really interested to see how this ring was constructed. I figure there's some kind of bearing in there. It's quite a smooth operation. Now, this peg had broken. I've pinned it and glued it. It seems to be a good strong joint. The end cap goes over that peg. You need to position it so that the inward slant on the end of that cap is aligned with the bottom of the cockpit. You know you've got it right because when you turn it around and look from the top, that stripe should align with the peg there, and the two stripes on the side align with the holes. Now we need to put the screw in and we'll see whether that joint is strong enough. I'm just going to be gentle screwing this in. I'm having to apply quite a lot of pressure to turn this screw, so I'm really hoping that that peg is going to hold. It's doing okay at the moment. Right, now we're getting to the end. I don't want to put too much pressure on there. I think that's probably enough. There we go. Ha 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 ha. One fixed cockpit. Nice. We have two stickers that need reattaching. The one that goes back over the screw, and then the one that goes over the end cap. Job done. Finally, we have the canopy, and that's fairly trivial to slot into the top. And I do believe that's a thumbs up from the pilot. Now we can install the cockpit onto the main body of the B-wing. But I'd actually forgotten to install a small part on this cockpit, and it's this piece here. This small piece of white plastic responsible for that glorious Kenner sound, and I bet the parents of the 80s have wished the factory had forgotten to install this piece, but we're not going to today. It just simply slides in here over this peg, and there's a nice click. Now we can just put the cockpit over those two pegs on the body, like so, and if you notice, that piece of plastic aligns with the cog of the motor. Buzzing. The filling of our sandwich is now complete. We're ready for the second slice of bread, and we just need to carefully align that over the wing there, and everything else should just slot into place. Just push that down, around. There we go. Fairly simple. And we just have a number of screws to put into place. Let's crack on. Finally, time to turn this over and have a look at the front, because we now need to install the battery lid. Now this lid is in great condition. They're quite often split down here. Simple construction, this one. Battery terminal goes there, and then the lid just goes on top. One screw to hold it all together. And now I'm just going to install this into the body. And there we are, one battery lid installed. We're on to the final stretch of assembly. Next we'll tackle, I'll call it the tail gun. Comes in 3 parts. We just need to position the gun within the housing. Just get it the right way around. I think it's that way around, or is it that way around? There we go, that way around. Slide that into the holes of the main body, and then take the top part of the housing, or the bottom part of the housing. This can be a little bit fiddly to get on, I found, but if I just push the gun to the right, it should pop on like so. And then we just have 4 screws. The final screw. Now, there's a left and right wing, or top and bottom, depending upon your point of view. You can easily determine which wing goes on which side by looking at the dots on the top of the ship and matching that with the wing that has the dot on it. You'll also notice that the straight edge faces towards the front of the ship. There's also a left and right gun. It's a very simple job, just slide the gun in and then match the peg to the post. And as you can see, the smaller gun is to the outer part of the wing. And now it's just a case of sliding the wing onto the wing mount and it clips on just like so. Repeat for the other side. And in it goes. And here is the restored B-wing. I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. It's been a fun project. I actually think this is an underrated vehicle. It probably didn't sell as many as the Falcons or X-Wings or even the Snowspeeders. But as I've been restoring this vehicle, I've really grown to like it. It's an awesome ship, even from the Star Wars universe. Its asymmetric design is quite unique. You've got the cockpit down one end and these guns down the other. And I think the guys at Kenner did a really good job of translating this into a toy. One thing that struck me is the detail on the moulding and the decals as well. It really makes this vehicle shine. But this ship isn't really about its looks. No, it's really about its play features. Like a lot of the Kenner vehicles of the day, it does have an undercarriage, and that's working very nicely now. But we don't really care about an undercarriage, not when it has a gyro cockpit and these S-foils. You see, this ship not only flies horizontally, but it can also fly vertically. And the gyro cockpit ensures that the B-wing pilot is kept safe and snug in his seat, no matter what the orientation of the ship is. Because that weight that we saw during the restoration ensures that this cockpit always remains in the upright position. And finally, we get to see the S-foils in action. They extend and retract, so when you go in attack mode, you can use this engine on the back, which I think is an amazing design feature. Those guys at Kenner need to be applauded for that. With a twist of the engine, the wings extend, and when you let go of the engine, that ratchet we saw during the restoration kicks in and holds those wings in place. That's working beautifully now. And of course, we have additional weapons on the ends of these wings, and in true Kenner fashion, we had the laser sound, we have the button here, we have the batteries loaded, so there's only one thing for it. Attack, attack, attack! Once again, I'd just like to thank Luke from Reynolds Reviews for gifting this B-wing for restoration. It's been a fantastic, fun project. And now I'm going to hang this from the ceiling in the collection room. Thanks for making it this far. Leave a comment, like and subscribe, or try some of these other VTR classics. Until next time, stay safe and cheers.